Some brands are legendary. In every category, someone sets the standard, and some companies create raving fans. Join Scott Wozniak and Caitlin Johnson of Swaz Consulting as we dig into the tactics and tools behind great organizations. How did the legends do it? And how can you become a legendary brand too? Our guest today is one of the most remarkable human beings and one of my favorite friends. We get to welcome Jim Huling. Now, Jim Huling right now is known most of all for his executive coaching and leadership development. He's a best-selling author of one of the best books on operational excellence that I know, and I've read a ton, 4 Disciplines of Execution. He's a co-author of this. This book has been translated into 16 languages, implemented by organizations on thousands of industries worldwide, including us at Chick-fil-A. In fact, that's how Jim and I first met. We hired him to come train us and talk through the process because Jim spent 14 years as a global managing consultant for Franklin Covey's 4 Disciplines of Execution practice. By the way, we typically call that 4DX. So you'll probably hear us calling it the 4 Disciplines of Execution. He's done this with more than 70,000 leaders around the world. And before that, he spent a decade in the CEO role, leading company. That company was recognized 4 times as one of the 25 best companies to work for in America. So this is a remarkable human being who's led it well, who trained it well, and now coaches the individual leaders. And he's not just a smart business guy. He's actually the recipient of the National Leadership Character Award, celebrating his integrity, vision, passion for leadership development. He's a speaker. He's also, just in case you weren't feeling a little bit of an impression pressure here, right? Jim is a 3rd-degree black belt in Taekwondo and an 11-year CrossFit veteran. And I don't mean he used to do it. Jim still lifts more than most young men can pull off, and he just turned 70. The dude is a stud with a huge heart and one of our best friends. In fact, I met him through Chick-fil-A. Caitlin met him years ago through she's been part of the Franklin Covey organization as well. He's been a mentor, friend, and inspiration to both of us, and I cannot wait to dive in with Jim Huling. Buckle up.
All right, Jim, we are so honored and excited to have you as a guest on the podcast today. And when I think about, goodness gracious, the time that we have spent together in our past and what I know about your amazing experience is that you've had an opportunity to see the inside workings of leadership teams all over the world. Mm-hmm. And so I want to talk about, from your perspective, what have you seen as key characteristics for a healthy leadership team?
It's such a great place to start. And thank you both for having me on today. We're old friends on this. Yes. So it's a little bit of a reunion as well. I'm kind of emotional being with the two of you today. So thanks for allowing me to be open-hearted, as I answer this question. And Caitlin, one thing I like to say, and you've heard me say it many times, Scott, as well, that I was so blessed in my life that I got in front of 70,000 leaders in 21 countries. And I don't say that with any hubris. In fact, I kind of say it with a tinge of exhaustion. That was quite a 14-year period in my life, although Delta loved me a lot during those years, right. But I come away from that experience. I like to say it because it's not just a context of I live in Atlanta, Georgia, and I've mostly coached leaders who live in Atlanta, Georgia. I've got the benefit of a global perspective.
Yes.
And the best news I have from a global perspective is that the issues of leadership and culture and execution and deep trust and psychological safety, they're global. They're everywhere. I think I mentioned to you guys, I'm on tomorrow in a workshop with over 100 executives in the largest bank in Africa, and they want to talk about how do you build a great culture and a great team in the midst of a very changing world. It's the same thing, partly of what we're going to talk about today. Right. So I think the good news is, as human beings who choose the role of leadership, we are mostly thinking about working on the same 4 or 5 key objectives right now. And I don't know how everybody feels about that, but I find that hopeful because all of us together, we're probably going to find a solution. We may have a piece of it here and you have a piece over there and somebody else has a piece, but together in the next period of time, I think we as leaders in the world are going to solve a lot of the things that we're struggling with today.
Yeah.
All right, you have me on the edge of my seat now, though, Jim, because you said there's 4 or 5 global, like break down the borders, things that leadership teams maybe struggle with, or maybe that you're seeing are the indicators of healthy teams. So what are you seeing?
Yeah, I love this. And, all 3 of us are such nerds for operational excellence, right?
100%.
Everybody that knows us is like, what? They're starting with this, But it is the thing that honestly is the greater need at the moment, not operational excellence being a close second to it, but this is at the top of mind for almost everybody.
Well, I would say I think they're similarly important, but in sequence. I've learned the hard way. If you don't figure out a healthy team, they can't do operational excellence. And so we still need to figure out all the tools and systems and goal setting and disciplines. And like we could spend hours digging into 4DX, 4 disciplines execution, but feeding that, maybe not more important than that, but at least sequentially first is like, if the team doesn't work well together, all those cool systems don't actually happen.
In fact, you're swimming upstream the whole time, and you're going to make half the progress and be twice as tired, right? So this is the way to do it, right? But I love what you said.
I'll interrupt one more time just to confess. We have this engine for customer experience engine. In the early versions, I didn't have anything about leadership teams on it, and it broke down 3 or 4 times in a row, and we're like, what happened? And we had to go add an element for teams just because. Wow. Yeah, it's not an optional feature. So
because the only version of that system I know anything about is the world-changing, excellent one you offer today. So wow, nice to know a little bit of the history behind that.
Yeah, Okay, so
I want to riff in with what you said. So
come on, play with us.
In 4DX, you got to let me get in there, Scott. Hold on. So in 4DX, we have this concept of a lead measure. And it's a simple concept. We're not doing 4DX right now. I'm just introducing vocabulary. So a lead measure is the action or behavior that drives an outcome. And typically it's the one that drives it the most. Well, what you just said fits nicely into that profile. If operational excellence is the outcome we want, then healthy teams are the lead measure to that outcome. And then I'm going to riff in one more thing right where you left me off there is I think the lead measure for healthy teams is healthy leadership teams. I think the leaders are the ones who set this tone. They set the atmosphere, they set the value system, they set the work ethic, they set the degree to which people are treated with respect and even kindness. The leaders set the standard. And for the most part, in the broad way we're speaking right now, everybody else has a job of living up to that standard. But leaders are the standard bearers. We hold the standard. So if every leader in the world who's listening to the 3 of us right now just felt a 100-pound brick on their shoulder, that's right. Welcome to the role of leadership, right? Comes with the job. You carry the standard. You must not only invent the standard, but you have to be a living example of that standard if you want anybody else in your organization to do it as well. So what you were talking with me about earlier today, this healthy leadership team, I think that's one of the keys to all of it. And I have a couple of thoughts on it. Do you mind if I rat-a-tat them out for a moment? Yeah. And then the 2 of you, I'm talking to 2 people who know as much as I do about all of this. So riff in with me and let's make it an even better presentation. But I'm going to start with something that I don't think everybody starts with. In fact, I've never heard anybody start with this. Not that I'm the smart one in the room, because clearly I'm not. I'm outclassed on the other side of the screen. But I do believe it. And the number one thing I start with is deep trust and psychological safety. Now, I just felt the air go out of the balloon in every listener to our podcast right now. Like, what, Jim? What? You're the execution guy. Give me something hard edged I can go do. Why are you starting with this soft, squishy thing?
Yeah.
and I'll tell you why. Because trust is the one thing that changes everything. So in other words, you want to talk to me about execution, and I was privileged, along with a couple of other people, to write one of the best-selling books in the history of the world on that subject. And I would tell you, you're not going to have any execution if you don't have trust.
Wow.
High-performing teams, let's say it 2 ways to make it go through to our listeners who might be driving their car or eating a cheeseburger or whatever while they're listening to us today.
Right.
high trust teams are not always high execution teams.
Mm.
So sometimes they have the great cultural elements.
Right,
They tell
right.
the truth, they speak with candor, they use facts, all the things you want, but they don't have that edge of accountability and execution that it takes to get things done. So high trust teams are not always high execution teams.
Right.
But you know where I'm going.
Come on.
High execution teams are always high trust teams. You cannot have high execution without high trust.
Yes.
If there's anybody listening to us today, and the three of us have met them, we could name names, but we won't, that say, we're going to get to trust. We're going to get, we know we got a lot of work to do in trust. But right now we got some stuff we got to get done. We have results we've got to produce. And when we get those results, then, hey, Jim, Caitlin, Scott, we'll have time to work on those softer things like trust. And all I can say in my courageous executive coaching way is you've got it exactly backwards.
Yes.
Because the environment of trust is what enables execution to be possible.
That's right.
And flip it over. If you have an environment of distrust, you will never get the kind of performance. You will get a level of compliance because nobody wants to get fired. Nobody wants a bad performance review. Yeah, people will do what you tell them to do in that world, but they will never do more than that until they feel that they belong, that they're part of something, and frankly, part of something that matters, a purpose that we want to talk about maybe later today if there's time.
Yes.
But until we get that recipe right, and Scott, you started the day this way because you started out talking about sequence matters as much as content, right? You said that brilliantly. All I'm doing in my normal way of drafting behind people like you is I'm hammering home the tactical part of what it really means to do that. Now, I'm selling this Kool-Aid today. Are you guys buying it? Do you both of you know as much as I do about that subject? Let me give you a moment to get in here.
I have lived that. And I don't mean the happy version. I've lived the bad side of that. In fact, literally, this is why I do what I do now. Is I was a part of some things where the organization broke down and trust failed. And I think this is important with well-meaning, well-intentioned leaders at the top. These weren't bad actors doing illegal things. Some of them are still my friends to this day. Intended well and were unable to create trust and culture. And we can get into some of the tactics on how in a second, but and I saw how the organization was unable, and I don't mean it was annoying, like the organizations collapsed in two cases. They don't exist anymore because we didn't get our mission done. We didn't execute because the leaders broke down because we lost trust at the top.
Right.
I hit a button, right? Like,
we did it, right?
Yeah, no, I learned that one the hard way.
Well, I have several battle scars that you can't see under my Nike shirt. Right. Because a hard one, and I know Caitlin has them too. I've been Caitlin's partner in a number of really tough moments where we were we were hammering home this very thing. I want to bring you back though to this idea that, in fact, let's divert. Let's bring in one other guru into the conversation symbolically. Let's talk about Abraham Maslow for a minute, who's very famous for having this hierarchy of needs, right? And it's very fashionable today to say, well, that's kind of an old idea, Jim, and I think all of this has changed, And all I can tell you is if you really think that, you should go back and revisit Maslow's hierarchy of needs, because it is still fundamentally the most definitive cultural blueprint I think any leader will ever find. It may not have all your answers, but it's got the architecture that you need to build on. Well, in his hierarchy, which we won't cover today because it would take a while, the top level is self-actualization, which is I have become and done everything that I was gifted and called to be. And I stand at the top of this lifetime of experience feeling that I did exactly what I was supposed to do in the way I was supposed to do it. And I don't know, those words give me chill bumps when I say them,
I sat up taller when you were saying it. I was like, yes.
I think everybody wants that. Well, you know what's at the bottom of Maslow's hierarchy of needs? Safety.
The
bottom rung it's a very thing we're talking about today. Yes. So if we promised each other we would be very tactical today, not philosophical, and I'm in danger. I need to course correct and be more tactical. But let's take a tactical approach. if you're a leader, if you're an executive, you're a leader of a team, or you're even more importantly, a leader of leaders, when is the last time somebody told you publicly that you were wrong? When was the last time somebody even suggested that you might possibly in some universe be wrong? You know, it's
Can I pause you for a minute there? Holy moly. Because I was anticipating you were going to say, like, when was the last time you told somebody else that they're doing a good job? Right. And that they're safe in their role, reinforcing them. But you actually turned it around and said, like, when was the last time you were open to having somebody push against your ideas?
Right. And Caitlin, can I stretch that just a tiny bit? You had created a culture in which everybody felt that this was an okay thing to do. Of course, respectfully, of course, based on facts, of course, of course, right? But most leaders, and I'm not being critical of anybody here, most leaders hearing us do this right now will say, I'm not sure anybody's ever said that to me publicly. And the reason I put publicly in there is because it's a little different for me to come in your office and close the door and drop the cone of silence and say, I think we might be making a mistake. That's one level, right? But there's a greater level, which is in our team, if you have an opinion, you're expected to express it. And if you think we're doing the wrong thing, you're expected to raise the flag. We all watch each other's back on this team. We don't let each other go down. Now, that kind of team, that's a team that can execute. Now they're ready to execute, right? Because they've got that fundamental down.
And think about the next level of safety, because I think the shallow level of safety is I feel safe because we never disagree with each other. That has the surface. So there's a phrase I use for my back in there, but I call that safety theater. So if you're theater, like we'll have a house on the stage, and from the crowd looking in, like they're living in that house. You come backstage, you're like, it's a couple of boards, it's painted, it's an actual house. It gives you the feeling of a house from the audience perspective, but it's not an actual functional house. And this is safety theater. Hey, it looks like this team is safe because they're all polite to each other. You raised the bar on us, Jim, as you usually do. This safety is like, I'm safe to disagree. Getting each other's back does not mean telling you, Scott, you're always correct. Having my back is calling it out when I'm about to do something stupid. That's real safety, not safety theater.
I love the way you said that. I love your imagery too. And isn't that the ultimate? I mean, isn't the ultimate of safety knowing that you are surrounded by people who care enough to take the calculated risk of helping you not fall? Isn't that what a team is supposed to be in the end? You know, but somewhere we got away from this of saying a great team is one that does what they're told to do in the way they're told to do it in the time they're given to do it. Somehow we got this sort of manufacturing assembly line image around what a team really is. And there's nothing wrong with a production line, but that's nowhere near what we're now we're talking about. This kind of deep trust and psychological safety is to me the floor of the house. And you can build 2 or 3 or 4 stories on top of that house. But if that foundation is cracked, the more you layer onto it, the sooner you're going to, as you said so beautifully, Scott, see it fall right in front of you. Yeah. Hey, there's a second and a third item. Is it? Have I got too long? No. So, can everybody laugh just a minute? You know, the people who know me know that I'm kind of known for giving a very deep explanation of everything. You know, I don't know.
And in threes.
Yes. You're not supposed to reveal everything, Kate.
No, but I know and I anticipate. Like, I'm like, I know he's got 2 more juicy pieces of information.
I have a long-standing habit. My brain delivers information to me in threes. And so, of course, Caitlin and I have been together 12, 14 years, and she's heard many versions of there are 3 things you need to know. But here's number 2.
Okay, I'm ready.
And it's more tactical. I'm easing my way into the tactical part of it. We have operational clarity, and we are aligned on not only our vision, but on our values. So now operational clarity, that's very akin to a 40X kind of thing. Do we know what matters most? And do we know what matters least? And do we devote our energy to the best possible extent we can to the things that matter more than the things that matter least? That's around clarity. And gosh, we could do a whole podcast on clarity, couldn't we? Good grief,
Absolutely.
But if anybody knows 4DX, they're used to that discussion. But then we go over to the side and say, equal to that, equal to clarity of goals, clarity of outcomes, clarity of responsibility, clarity of role, equal to all of that is, do we share the same values? Because clarity is about what we do, and values are about how we do. And there won't be anybody listening to the three of us who hasn't had at some point, and I'm not naming names today, a top performer who felt that their production results granted them the privilege of not following the rules, of not living by the values. So as long as I'm doing the what, you don't care, boss, about the how. Wrong answer, wrong. Because every time that we allow and acknowledge and reward a person who produces results in the wrong way, we're actually pulling down the whole structure that the team is based on. And this is hard, right? Let's be very real world. What if you're top performer that produces $1 million more than everybody else in your organization, but you quietly suspect and you hear rumors that they cut corners and they don't always tell the truth, and they shortchange the delivery people who have to provide the actual results. And there's this long list of sort of a cloud over their head. And you sit in your office and say, well, I can't say anything to hurt him. I can't say that's our top performer. What if he quit? Right.
Right.
Well, what if he stays? What if he stays and he does what he's doing? And then one day the 5 of your best people leave because they don't want to work in a culture like that.
That's what I have seen is that because I've lived this one too. We have a lot of clients will come in and they're like, yeah, but we can't afford to lose her. Like she's cranked, and they see the loss of losing her performance. But what they're not seeing is the way that her bad behavior is decreasing the performance of everyone else around them. Every time, I probably went through this with clients literally 100 times now. Every time we either get that person to change their behavior or get that person to go behave that way somewhere else. Every time that transition happens, like the day after, there's this rush of energy and performance on the rest of the team, and you suddenly realize all the ways they were depressing everyone else around them.
Yeah, on the other side of that decision, you think it's the best thing you ever did.
Seriously,
but on the threshold of that decision, your hands are shaking, your heart, is racing. And I love what you said, because the question is not, can we afford to lose her? The question is, can the team withstand the impact of keeping her?
Yes.
That's the question we should be asking, right? But we get it reversed. And by the way, let's don't miss, the three of us, anybody who knows us would expect us to say, but long before we say that a person shouldn't be on our team because of those things, we're going to work really hard to be clear, to be courageously candid, to tell them the truth, to help them learn and grow and not do those things. We're going to save that top performer if we can. We're not being cavalier about it.
No.
But we are saying, if you come to the final moment and it's values versus performance, you better choose values if you want a team that can produce sustainable results and operate cohesively.
Yeah, because ironically, if you choose performance in that case, performance over values, you'll get neither values nor performance.
It's true. In the long term, that's certainly true.
Short term, you'll think you got away with it, but it'll come back and you'll lose everything. It's not good.
I love that.
Yeah. I think this is one of the themes, and maybe we'll get to your third in a second, but you just had a phrase in there that I'm like, oh, that's so good. On the threshold of that decision, it is a terrifying leap. However, on the other side of it, it always is like, that was the best thing I've done. And I found so many of like what we're talking about for the team and the self-actualized life, like when I get to that glorious place is almost entirely made up, in my experience, of these terrifying decisions that turn out like, I'm so glad I did. It's on the other side of that fear is the life and the company that you want.
Yeah. In fact, what you just said is true in business and in leadership. And it's true, if you don't mind me saying, spiritually and as an individual and in a relationship. I mean, what you just said really covers everything about the human experience and in a powerful way. You said that wonderfully, Scott. Hey, now the whole audience is saying, well, doesn't he always do three?
I know we can't leave it hanging here.
Can't leave without
Well, thanks everybody for coming. This has been a great day. We're
literally, I wouldn't be able to sleep tonight. I'd be like,
exactly.
Let's do a quick record. So here's number 3, and this is only 3, and sort of in my way of talking about these things. You guys would have your own 3, and we would match on 2, but you'd have something else. I'm recognizing all of that today. But the third one, and it's the one that becomes a defining for me. If I have the first 2, if I don't have the first 2, I can't do this. But if I have them, then it is: are you committed to excellence? Are you committed to excellence? And I'm not trying to preach about this in sort of an old school manufacturing quality control kind of way. I'm not talking about that. You can make people comply to quality standards through all the traditional tools that leaders have used for the last 200 years, or 2,000 years. I don't know, maybe. But what you can't do is make them want to be excellent. Yeah. You can't do it. So you have to try to build a team around people who want to be excellent, who bring to the table, Caitlin, Scott, I really want to be great at this. Yeah. Will you help me? Because the other type of person, and we're not talking about them as a human being, but just saying as a team member, they are compelled to excellence. And that's an uphill struggle. And if you get them to excellence, they're kind of mad at you for having had to do it. And the moment you stop watching, they quit doing it. I mean, they're just, because they never were, in fairness to them, they never were committed. There was nothing inside them. Like, you can see me pulling my shirt. There's nothing pulling them to excellence, like the 3 of us have. We talk about it all the time, that it drives me crazy. If I set out to do something and I could have done better, and the only reason I didn't do better is because I didn't care enough or try hard enough or work an extra hour. If I'd read that email a second time, I would have changed it. We don't have that.
Can I talk a little bit about this, Jim? Because I actually just had a leader in a training session ask me, she is Gen X. I'm not going to forget about the Gen X's, Scott.
Thank you.
Okay. Gen X.
This is a little rant of mine. I can't tell you how many times I see people talk about generations and they're like, we should talk about all of them. The boomers, the millennials. We even talk about Zs. And I'm like, there was another one in there.
Hello.
Sorry. Rant over. Thank you, Caitlin.
Yeah. Okay. So a Gen X leader was asking me, how do you motivate a Gen Z towards excellence? I'm like, oh boy, that is a conversation. And I don't think I have all of the answers. Right. And so, but what I'm hearing, what I'm thinking, Jim and Scott, I'd like to hear your thoughts is, you said there's 3 things that are needed for a healthy leadership team: like trust and psychological safety, operational clarity of vision and values, and then a commitment to excellence. And so what I'm thinking this leader is wanting to do is that number 3, commitment of excellence. So if we were to reverse engineer it, I suppose I could go back to her now and say, well, tell me about the company culture. Tell me about the values and what that looks like. Tell me about the vision of what you all are working towards and the safety, the psychological safety, because perhaps she's wanting to push and pull, like if I was to pull my shirt, like you were kind of demonstrating with yours, like pull this Gen Z towards excellence. But one, I understand that person's going to need to feel compelled towards that. But then 2, because we can't control how people make their decisions, but as leaders, can we influence the operational clarity of vision and values and the trust and the psychological safety to create an environment for this Gen Z to step into excellence?
Yes. Gosh, first of all, you asked that question so beautifully. Good grief. I think I'm done. I don't think I'm going to talk to you guys anymore today. Good grief, Caleb. That was so beautifully said. And I won't be able to match that level of eloquence. I can't. But I would tell you that you're looking at through the wrong end of the telescope when you ask the question that way. You're saying that if we do these things and we do these things, can we get a person to excellence, to be to excellence? And I don't think it works that way. I think you have to turn the telescope around and you have to say, in the interview process, does the person demonstrate any degree of a desire for excellence?
Yes.
Excellence, a commitment to excellence cannot be a have to. You can't make it work. Now you can put rules in place and have strong
Yeah.
consequences and take away their money. And, I don't know, you can do all kinds of things as a leader, but gosh, what an awful way to try to get people to. So you can't make it a have to.
And I
You
think
have
you can only
people make
get,
it hang, Scott, it has to be a want to. It can't
yes,
be a
Yeah.
have to. It
yes.
has to be a want to. And it has to start, and I won't rant. I love Scott's rants. I would like to see more of these, but I'll let you back in the car. I didn't mean to cut
Come
you off.
on, no, you're rolling.
Thing. If I get on a rant, Caitlin's heard this before, Scott, it's about how casual we are in the interview process.
Yes, yes.
Nobody wants to ask a disarming question.
We talk about that
Everybody's
too.
so nice. Interviewing today is a sales call. Interviewing today is, would you please come work for us? Because we just think you're awesome, right? And I'm teasing a little bit, but I try to get my clients to ask really introspective, behavioral-based questions that will allow a person to reveal to us who they really are. Yeah. And then our job is to say, well, these characteristics will fit wonderfully. And to another person, those characteristics will not fit at all. That really, the leader should be the gatekeeper of who gets on the team. And they should do that job like our life depended on it, right?
Yeah, listen, I just getting excited. That's why I like keep talking. I'm so passionately in agreement. So many of the problems people bring us in to fix in their operational engine is really a hiring problem that's finally showing up as bad operations.
Yes.
With all the best management systems in the world, you can get compliance. But if you want excellence, you hire for excellence. That it's a drive inside. And this is important. Like, so tactically, let's talk tactically. How do you do this, right? I love the questions. I'll go like, you can't ask, do you care about excellence in the interview? Right? That's not the hard-hitting question. Because like, yeah, of course I do. Like, I'm awesome, right? No, you say, tell me about a time when you were in a situation, and you may not even use the word excellence, right? Where there was a high bar or you were behind schedule, and how did you handle? And you want to hear them say things like, man, I stayed up and we did the work and I got creative and we did not let it go. And if they can tell you specific stories, you're like, I mean, clearly,
I love that.
Jim guy.
Because what you would hear in that statement would be that it bothers them that they didn't make it to excellence. That's what you're listening for. And I have a question. I like that one. That might be my new number one.
Well, I want to hear yours. Come on.
My old number one is, as I would say, Scott, if I was interviewing you, which I would consider to be the greatest privileged day of my life, I would say, Scott, I want to start with something that may surprise you a little bit. I want you to tell me about the single largest professional failure of your life. Ooh. And I want to know in detail. You don't have to reveal names or circumstances, but I really want to know what happened. And then I want you to tell me what you learned from it that you will be bringing to our company if we hire you. And I often say to the person, by the way, if you skate over this question, I'm going to shake your hand very nicely and thank you for coming in today. And our interview will be over. Because if you can't tell the truth about when you failed, how do I know you're telling the truth about when you succeeded, right? So let's be honest with each other. That question is the type of, but it is so hard to get people to ask a question like that, right? And then a year later, we're still talking about Charlie and how we got a problem with Charlie and we can't get Charlie to do what we need him to do. And if we went back to the interview notes, we would say, oh my gosh,
sorry, Charlie.
That's so good, man. That's so good.
I like the part that you added, and to reinforce, please be candid. You said it more eloquently than if I was to repeat it. But I like the fact that, you're not setting, as an interviewer, you're not setting the interviewee up for failure, or I'm going to trick you with this question. But I truly want to understand, what was a challenging situation you were in that you failed, and what did you do to work through it? And I really want to hear it. So, I can imagine in your head, you're going to be making up a story to make it sound like you're amazing through it. But we all have these difficult moments, because I swear when I was in college, someone coached me, never say in an interview what you actually failed at. Like, spin it and turn it, right?
My greatest problem, Caitlin, is that I just care too much and work too hard at my job.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
that advice is out there.
If we have time for it's like 10 seconds, I'll try to do fast. I was working last week with a client, and sometimes my job, I'm an executive coach, as you guys will have probably told everybody. And occasionally what I get hired to do is interview an executive candidate.
Yep.
So it's a wonderful role and I like it. And I even have 50 questions of my own that I've curated over the years, and I kind of feel like I got some game when it comes to interviewing. Maybe not compared to the two of you. But I asked this gentleman, I said, same thing. Tell me the story. And I said, it's got to be a real story. And this gentleman, I would say 35-ish. Everybody looks young to me now, like the two of you, but 30, 35-ish. And he said, well, I can tell you the story right now. I had a great idea to start a business. I took all of our savings. I borrowed money from my parents. I borrowed money from my wife's parents. I mortgaged our house. I poured it all into the business. And I was completely wrong about what the marketplace wanted. And I not only lost my money, I lost all my in-laws' money and my family's money. Now, that's the story, right? So you might say, well, he didn't get hired, did he? Absolutely got hired. And guess what? For a CFO job for an $800 million company. Because I said to the CEO, if you're going to hire a CFO, this is your guy. Yeah. He will never lose your money. He will never mishandle your money. This guy will go to his grave faithful in the responsibility of being a great steward of the company's finances. I said I would hire him on the spot if I were you, right? And I'm being a little bit dramatic, but I'm also saying what I really feel, that kind of an interview yields the greatest insight, and the greatest insight yields the best hiring decision. They fit in a chain of events. And if you go casual, or you get scared, or you're uncomfortable to ask the tough questions, you're just flying blind. You might as well turn off the GPS and just drive and see where you end up, because you're not going to get where you wanted to get.
That's it.
Yeah.
Hey, real quick, this podcast only grows through word of mouth. That's it. So if there's any part of this podcast that you think someone else should hear or would be helpful for something they're working on, it would mean a lot to me if you would share it. The whole reason I do this is to share the helpful stuff I'm learning with more people than I can reach in person. It could be via text, DM, whatever's easy. You hit the share button and you can help them and me in 5 to 7 seconds. Thanks. I will jump in with one more thing I've seen. And Jim, I wonder if you've seen this too. Excellence and how you get people passionate about excellence. So I have Gen Z kids that we are trying to raise as people committed to excellence. I think part of it is this. So you said this kind of graciously earlier, Jim, and I'll go back and maybe lean in a little more. It's like, it doesn't necessarily mean they're a bad person if they aren't committed to excellence here. And this is my experience, and I'm seeing this in my kids. The zone of work, if it connects to who I am and my life calling and purpose and who I think I was made for, you'll see me show up with a passion for excellence. And if you put me in this other zone that's not my calling and not what I was made for, it's the same human being, and it is pulling teeth to get them to do the work. One of my kids, I'll put her on the spot, my oldest, she's bright. And one of our big challenges for her was like, do the work. Just because you're smart enough to skate, like you could have earned a better grade. Everyone's patting you on the back, but you couldn't. But there was one zone, in the arts, when it comes, she's, by the way, now she's in college doing cinematography, animation. She's studying to become an animation movie maker, right? And we are seeing her work at a level of intensity, like take on extra work, push further than the assignment, because she found a zone she cared about that, I'll be blunt, I never could get her to do for her math homework. The girl, she had the brain to do it. She got decent grades, but like she did just enough to skate by math and poured herself into it. So some of this is like, they're not a bad human being. Maybe they're in the wrong seat, wrong space. Maybe they're doing the job because mom and dad said, this is the safe path. And they have not found the self-actualized life. I don't know, Jim, am I being overly gracious here? It's like, no, that everyone should pick excellence.
Oh, no. This is a great truth. Great truth. I mean, honestly, and I just love we're on a highly regarded business podcast. Everybody knows this podcast. And yet you're willing to talk about things that are fundamental to the human experience that apply just as well to business, but they also apply to life and everything. And so I applaud the two of you for your courage in going straight towards this. And So I think we still come back to this thing of each person. I'm just going to say it the way I feel it, Scott and
Yeah.
Caitlin. I hope I say it right. I think
Mhm.
every one of us was born for some purpose. We were equipped in order to do something. We were given a set of gifts that we had the opportunity to develop and refine and put in the hard work, of course. But all of it, from a blueprint standpoint, made sense from our point of origin, whatever you believe that to be. And I also think then that every day of our life, when we live in alignment to that blueprint, we are joyful, we have energy, we have optimism, we're great people to be around, we think the world's a great place. Doesn't matter what's going on externally. If we're in line with our blueprint, we are on purpose, as is so popular to say these days.
Yeah.
And so I try very hard to get leaders and teams to do these two things, and they're the same two things apply to different people. One, what's your purpose?
Yes.
Why did you become a leader? Let's start there. Was it the best paying job that you knew of? So you said, hey, I'll take one of those, because it does pay well. Being a leader does pay well, right? But were you called to it? Did you care about the people involved? In other words, was there any kind of a homing beacon that you heard and started to follow at some point in your life? You're like, ping, I hear it. What is that?
Right,
Ping,
right.
It's that homing beacon. Did you follow that? And then if you did, you are probably wonderfully qualified to take a whole group of people through the same thought process of what's our purpose as a team? Why do we exist? Why should we exist? What difference will it make in the history of the universe that we were a team and we did some kind of work at one period of time? Does it matter at all to you? These are the kinds of questions that are very hard to get senior leaders to take a minute and let's explore them, right? Because Jim, we got stuff we got to do. We got quotas due by tomorrow. I've got a production shipment going out next week. We've got our largest client is visiting tomorrow. What do you expect us to do? I don't know. I don't know how you answer that, except you will do better and more if you start from a place of purpose than you will from a place of profit. You always will, right? Yes. You will perform for profit. The whole world confirms that for us, but it doesn't even compare. And then last of all, if I close it out, is to say, the real game of life for a leader is not achieving a result. Even though I'm a guy who wrote 2 books about achieving a result, I'm here to say that's not the game. The objective is to sustain that level of performance. Anybody can rally their team. Anybody can hold a pizza party and give out some awards and make the band play, and then, I don't know, we're all going to Cancun. I don't know. Anybody can rally a team for a momentary level of excellence. Anybody can do that. Well, figuratively speaking. What you can't do is sustain that. So when you come down off the other side, what happens to every team in the world when they exceed their quarterly quota? What happens to the next quarter?
Yeah, both got downward
every time,
right?
Every time, right? Because the way you achieved the quota wasn't sustainable.
Yeah.
And a leader who leads from a sense of what we do matters, guys. Yes, it's our jobs. Yes, we get paid for it. Yes, we need to be here. But it also matters. How you put the radio together matters. If we can get to that place, we can not only hit that high point, we can sustain it and even use it as a platform to go even higher. But we have to be willing to take a moment and go deep before we can go fast, right? That's really the key.
That's awesome. Yeah. And I will just note, I was about to ask you another deep question, then I realized we're actually starting to run out of time. We need to do this again.
I warned you.
I will say this, if you're a leader and you're wondering, how do I actually go? What are the tools? What are the tactics? What's the process of figuring that out? I'll say 2 things that we can wrap up. First, I have found some of the most passionate, purpose-filled leaders in industries that everyone else thought was boring. This isn't reserved for I'm in Apple. I'm in the slums of Delhi working with children. I've seen fast food restaurants and manufacturing plants. One of the most purpose-filled leaders I know makes pallets, like warehouse pallets, right? He's like, I wasn't more complicated. I wasn't smart enough to do anything other than hammer some boards together. By the way, he built a $400 million business, and
Yeah.
passion and purpose to say, hey, we build the things that society runs on. We help make everything easier for other people. It's not your industry. Now, maybe you're in the totally wrong space. Maybe, but maybe you just need to see the purpose in your space. That's my first thought. And my second is maybe don't do it alone. Listen, I'm an executive coach and I have an executive coach. Get a coach. And if you want a purpose coach, I don't know anyone better than Jim Huling.
Oh, gosh, thank you. What a kind thing to say.
This is the kind of stuff. I mean, the guy's done it. Like sometimes it's like, oh, purpose. Well, it's because I couldn't cut it on the hard business floor. It's actually, you've done to the highest levels of business excellence in the world. You're considered one of the leading thought leaders on that. And you're the guy who's saying, I help those people figure out how to connect purpose and go even beyond what tactics are. So guys, we put his links in the show notes. If you want to dig in and get someone to help you get to the next level, beyond basic excellence to this world-class level, man, talk to our friend Jim, because it could change your life like it did for us.
Oh gosh, I have so many notes, Jim. Thank you so much for joining us today
welcome.
and sharing your wisdom.
I have so much energy. I think I'd like to go run a marathon right now. Like being with the two of you just lifts me up, And can I just say, a heart full of gratitude. I'm deeply honored to be one of your many guests on one of the greatest podcasts in the history of the world. And I would love to come back if I haven't worn out my welcome. I'd love to have another discussion with you. But thank you for letting me be here today. Thank you.
If you enjoyed this episode, you might want to sign up for our weekly newsletter. It's all new content with the same themes. You can subscribe for free and learn more about how we partner with our clients to build legendary companies at swazconsulting.com. That's www.swozconsulting.com. And if you want to get access to the actual tools and techniques that we use with our elite consulting clients, check out our online program at legendarybrandsacademy.com. That's www.legendarybrandsacademy.com. Greatness is possible. You just have to build the right engine.